I showed up for a dinner I'd meticulously planned and paid the deposit for Dad's 60th birthday celebration. It was supposed to be in a private room at the Hearthstone Grill, one of those charming, slightly upscale places in Oakhaven with warm brick walls, vintage-style Edison bulbs, and a menu that proudly announced chef's seasonal features instead of just specials. I'd put the $800 deposit down weeks ago, securing the space for what I anticipated would be a large family gathering. I had envisioned the family-style meal, making sure there were vegan options for Chloe, no red wine for Aunt Celeste, and gluten-free rolls for Uncle Perry. I thought of every single detail. I always do. It's expected of me. When I pulled into the Hearthstone Grill's parking lot, an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. Something felt distinctly wrong. There were no familiar cars gleaming under the evening lights. I didn't hear the usual cacophony of my family arriving, no Chloe blasting her car horn at an inappropriate moment, nor Dad's large truck parked at its usual slightly crooked angle. Just the unsettling hush of a quiet Friday evening. Knot tightened in my chest. I quickly checked my phone again, my thumb swiping to the confirmation email I'd saved. Friday, 7 p.m. The Hearthstone Grill. Clear as day. And then I scrolled to the FamConnect app to the group chat. Can't wait to see everyone for Dad's big night. I typed. Looking forward to it, honey. Mom had replied 2 weeks ago. I'd even sent a reminder, all set for Friday, just 3 days ago, to which she'd given a thumbs-up emoji. It was 7:02 p.m. I was precisely on time, standing there like an absolute fool. Inside the warm, inviting lobby of the Hearthstone Grill, the hostess, a young woman with a polite but distant smile, barely glanced up from her reservation system. "Hey's party?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts to keep it steady. A flicker of confusion crossed her face before she turned to her screen, her brow furrowed. "Hayes? Oh yes," she said, her tone hesitant. "The big birthday group for. Was it Mr. Hayes' 60th? Relief started to wash over me, but it was premature. They were actually here last night, on Thursday. My breath caught in my throat. They had a wonderful time, a very large group, yes. She continued, oblivious to my shock. Brought their own place cards, a beautiful tiered cake, the whole 9 yards. It looked like a truly lovely celebration. We understood the other daughter. You, I suppose, couldn't make it last minute? I felt the blood drain from my face. I stood there, frozen. No, I managed to whisper, the word catching in my throat. That's not possible. My voice grew a little stronger, a note of desperation creeping in. The reservation is for tonight. I made it myself. I have the confirmation right here. I fumbled for my phone, ready to show her the email. She tilted her head, her expression a mixture of pity and professional detachment. "I'm terribly sorry, ma'am," she said, her eyes flicking back to her screen. "I'm just going by what's in our system and what happened last night. They were definitely here, a party of 18 for the Hayes celebration." My mouth opened, a protest forming, but no sound came out. Instead, a laugh escaped me, a dry, short, bitter cackle that felt like it was tearing at my own throat on its way out. I stumbled back outside, the cool night air doing nothing to calm the raging fire in my chest. My hands were shaking as I dialed Mom's number. She answered on the third ring, her voice offensively cheerful, almost sing-song. "Hi, Olivia. Honey. Where is everyone?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "I'm at the Hearthstone Grill." A beat of silence. A pause that stretched for an eternity. Then I heard it, that light, airy, infuriating laugh she always used when she knew, absolutely knew, she'd messed up but had no intention of truly admitting fault. "Oh, Olivia, sweetie, I am so sorry," she chirped, the insincerity dripping from every word. "It was yesterday. Dad's party was last night." My grip tightened on the phone. My Chloe suddenly said she absolutely had to change the date. Something about a can't miss glam life influencer event on Friday. You know how she is. I could almost hear Chloe in the background, her voice high and careless. Was that sis? Tell her the cake was, like, totally amazing. Sucks, she missed it. Mom continued, her voice still breezy. And I was so sure I'd sent you a message on FamConnect about the change, sweetie. It must have just slipped my mind with all the running around. Ugh, silly me. We just figured when you didn't show up that you weren't coming, that you were too busy with your Pixelcraft Studios work or something. But don't you worry your pretty little head about it, she cooed. We saved you a big plate of leftovers. We can drop it off at your apartment tomorrow. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't utter another word. I couldn't. I just stood there on the cold sidewalk, my phone still clutched in my numb hand. The cheerful, oblivious sound of her voice, a sickening echo in my ear before I finally ended the call. Behind me, the warm, inviting lights of the Hearthstone grill reflected mockingly on the polished glass of the entrance, a door I had apparently never been truly invited to walk through for my father's celebration. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach, and I remember thinking, with a chilling clarity, did they genuinely forget to tell me in their whirlwind of catering to Chloe's whims? Or, a more painful thought, did they want me to feel this precise sting of exclusion? It wasn't the first time they'd left me out, made me feel like an afterthought. Not by a long shot. Not even close. It was just the first time they hadn't even bothered to concoct a flimsy pretense, a half-hearted lie to cover their tracks. I think that's what stung the most, what twisted the knife deepest in my gut. No feigned apologies later, no made-up last-minute emergencies, no awkward attempts to reschedule something just for me. Just this. The casual dismissal, the silence, and the offer of a plate of cold leftover food. When I was younger, much younger, I genuinely believed that being the responsible one, the reliable one, was something to be immensely proud of. A badge of honor, almost. My name is Olivia Hayes. I'm in my early 30s, the oldest daughter. I work as a freelance web designer, mostly contracting with a decent agency called Pixelcraft Studios. I live here in Oak Haven, in my own small apartment, not too far from them, but far enough to have my own space. Olivia doesn't make messes. Olivia doesn't need much. Olivia is so independent. That's how they've always described me, usually with a sigh of relief that I wasn't more trouble. Then there was Chloe, my younger sister. She was always the bright one, the baby of the family, the one who, according to Mom, just needed a little extra help, a little boost to get on her feet. So, I helped. Of course, I helped. What else was I supposed to do? The first big one, I think, was after she decided to move into that trendy downtown apartment she couldn't possibly afford on her own, dreaming of becoming a glam life influencer. Mom called me, her voice laced with that familiar, carefully cultivated worry. Olivia, honey, my Chloe found the perfect place, but she's just a little short on the deposit and first month's rent. She's trying so hard to build her brand, you know? It's just this one-time thing to get her started. I remember sighing, looking at my own modest savings account, the one I was building for a down payment on a better computer for work. But I wired the full amount for her initial moving expenses that very night. That one-time thing for her apartment somehow morphed into covering her unexpected utility bills for months. Then came the funding for her life-changing, short-term study abroad program in Europe, a program she bailed on at the last minute, claiming it wasn't the right vibe for her content. Of course, a significant portion of the fees I'd paid were non-refundable, money I never saw again. She didn't even offer to pay back the part that was refunded. When I tried to bring it up, ever so gently, just a mild inquiry about maybe, possibly, getting some of that study abroad money back, I was met with the same tired chorus of responses, usually from Mom. Olivia, don't be so transactional about everything. She's your sister, my Chloe. Family helps family. You're doing so well with Pixelcraft Studios. You can afford it more than she can. Honestly, why are you always keeping score with her? But I wasn't keeping score. Not really. It felt more like I was slowly bleeding out, my resources and my patience draining away, and they simply refused to acknowledge the wound, let alone offer a bandage. The worst, the absolute gut punch, was my 30th birthday last year. A milestone, you know? I wasn't expecting a parade or anything extravagant. Maybe a nice dinner, a thoughtful card. Instead, we had a small gathering at Mom and Dad's. Chloe, then in her mid-20s, received an early birthday gift from them, the brand new, top-of-the-line iPeer phone XV Pro. She shrieked with delight, tearing open the box. "Oh my God, Mommy, Daddy, I totally love it. This will be amazing for my glam life." Mom beamed. "Only the best for my little sweetie, my Chloe." Dad just grunted his approval from behind his newspaper. Then it was my turn. Mom handed me an awkwardly shaped package wrapped in flimsy floral paper. "Happy birthday, Olivia, honey," she said. "We know you're so practical now that you're 30. Inside was a hand-knitted tea cozy. A lumpy, garishly colored tea cozy in shades of puce and mustard yellow. "I prefer coffee. I rarely drink tea. I made it myself," Mom announced proudly. "For your teapots." I managed a weak, strained smile, the tea cozy feeling heavy and symbolic in my hands. "It's unique, Mom. Thank you." Chloe, meanwhile, was already snapping selfies with her new iPeer phone, posing and pouting, completely oblivious. "This camera is sick," she squealed, angling the phone to get the perfect shot. Mom cooed. "You look so beautiful, my Chloe, like a real star." Later that evening, a notification popped up on my phone from FamConnect. It was Chloe, of course. A new post on the family group, a ridiculously filtered selfie, captioned, "New iPeer phone, yay, feeling blessed." And there, artfully blurred in the background, just visible enough to be insulting, was my new tea cozy, discarded on a side table. I stared at the picture, a cold, familiar anger rising within me, and then I just quietly closed the app. No one else in the family commented on the tea cozy. No one even seemed to notice my forced smile or the way my heart ached with the blatant disparity. And it wasn't just big birthdays. There were the constant emergencies. I remember one night, about 2 years ago, my phone buzzed at nearly midnight. A frantic series of texts from Chloe. "OMG, Olivia. Emergency. Bailey ate a sock." Bailey was her ridiculously pampered little dog. "Vet says it could be serious. Bill is like $800. Please help. I'm freaking out." My heart lurched. I imagined the poor dog suffering. Without a second thought, I opened my banking app and transferred the $800, my own grocery money for the next 2 weeks, significantly depleted. "Sent. Hope Bailey's okay." I texted back. "OMG THX sis, for a lifesaver," was her immediate reply. The next morning, curious about Bailey's fate, I idly scrolled through Chloe's glam life stories. There she was. No mention of a sick dog. Instead, a series of glossy photos, freshly manicured nails, clinking a mimosa glass at a trendy brunch spot, followed by a suggestive shot of some guy's heavily tattooed hand resting possessively on her thigh. The caption underneath it all? "Living that soft life season." My blood boiled. I took a screenshot and sent it to Mom without comment. Her reply was almost instantaneous and utterly dismissive. "Olivia, you always take things so personally. My Chloe is young. She's just trying to live her life and have a little fun. Don't be such a downer." No one asked if I could actually afford the $800 just then. No one asked if I was okay, or if bailing Chloe out yet again had put me in a tight spot. It was just expected. I was the fixer, the ever-reliable source of funds. It wasn't just Chloe either. Even Mom and Dad, in their own ways, leaned on me. like the time the roof on their house started leaking badly after a big storm. Dad, a retired sales manager from Miller and Sons Hardware, grumbled about the cost of repairs. "This is going to set us back a fair bit, Olivia," he'd said, pointedly looking at me. Mom chimed in, "We were hoping, since you're doing so well with your design work." I ended up contributing a significant chunk towards the new roof, money pulled from my emergency fund, the one I kept for my actual emergencies. Dad's justification? "Well, Olivia, you grew up in this house too, you know. It's partly your responsibility to help maintain it." He didn't exactly say thank you after I transferred the funds. He just nodded curtly and said, "Good. That's settled then," as if my contribution was simply his due. But the memory that truly haunted me, the one that played on a loop in my mind on dark nights, was the time I overheard what they really thought of me. It was a few months after I'd sent Chloe another substantial sum, I think it was around $1,200 that time, to cover a series of bounced checks and a threatened utility shut off at her trendy apartment. I was visiting Mom and Dad's house in Oak Haven for the weekend. Late one night, I crept downstairs to get a glass of water from the kitchen. As I passed the living room, I heard their voices, low and conspiratorial. Chloe was there too. My feet froze on the bottom step. Chloe's voice, laced with a familiar, dismissive sneer. "Honestly, Olivia is just obsessed with being the martyr, isn't she? It's actually kind of sad when you think about it." A soft sigh from Mom. "I know, my Chloe. I know. She acts like she's our family savior or something, just because she helps out with money sometimes." Then Dad's gruff chuckle, a sound that made my stomach clench. "Well, let her pay, I say. She's not married, no kids. What else is she going to do with all that money she makes from her Pixelcraft Studios contracts?" Chloe again, her voice dripping with smugness. "Exactly. She probably thinks we'd all just fall apart without her constant help. Please, if she, disappeared off the face of the earth tomorrow, I probably wouldn't even notice for a week." I stood there in the darkened hallway, the cool glass of water trembling in my hand, my heart pounding a painful rhythm against my ribs. Each word was like a tiny, sharp icicle piercing my skin. They didn't know I was there, listening. Or maybe, a colder thought whispered, maybe they just didn't care if I heard. The next morning, Mom was in the kitchen, humming as she made blueberry pancakes, her specialty, acting as if nothing was amiss. As if their casual, cruel dismissal of me hadn't shattered something vital inside me. I didn't confront them. I couldn't find the words, or perhaps the courage. I just forced a smile through breakfast, the pancakes tasting like ash in my mouth. And then I made an excuse and drove back to my own quiet apartment in Oak Haven well before lunch. The silence in my car was a welcome relief. I didn't cut them off then. Not completely. Looking back, I absolutely should have. But just 3 days after that soul-crushing overheard conversation, Chloe texted me. A breezy, "Hey Olivia. Sue, I'm a tiny bit short on rent this month. Oops." Followed by the inevitable, "Promise, promise, promise, this is the absolute last time I'll ask." Cross my heart. And like the fool I was, the conditioned caretaker I had become, I sighed, logged into my bank, and sent the money. Because that's what I did. That's who I was to them. The reliable, endlessly forgiving, walking ATM. Until that disastrous Friday night at the Hearthstone Grill. Standing alone in that rapidly emptying parking lot, the reality hit me with the force of a physical blow. My family, Mom, Dad, Chloe, all of them had enjoyed Dad's 60th birthday dinner, a party I had put a deposit on without me. 18 people, full of food and cake, celebrating while I was deliberately excluded. That was the precise moment I realized, with a cold, sickening certainty, that it wasn't just that they didn't appreciate me or my efforts. It was far worse. They had decided, consciously or unconsciously, that I was simply easier to use, easier to manage, when I wasn't actually in the room to witness their machinations. I didn't drive straight home that night from the Hearthstone Grill. I couldn't. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove a few blocks before pulling over to a quiet, dark side street. Then I turned off the engine and just sat there, the silence in the car pressing in on me. Tears I hadn't allowed myself to shed at the restaurant began to stream down my face. Hot, angry, humiliated tears. I cried for a long time, hunched over the steering wheel, the sobs racking my body. The parking lot at Hearthstone had been nearly empty when I left. A couple of valets in their neat red vests moved sluggishly, looking bored. Inside, through the restaurant's large windows, I'd seen the blurred shapes of other families, other groups. Their laughter and the clinking of forks against plates a distant, mocking soundtrack to my desolation. I had sat behind the glass of my car, unseen, unheard. The silence in my car now was thick, heavy, settling into the small space like a suffocating fog. After the tears subsided, a cold, hard anger began to solidify in their place. My hands, still trembling, reached for my phone. I opened the FamConnect app, my thumb scrolling furiously up through the family group chat history. There it was. My message from 2 weeks prior. Quick check. Dad's 60th birthday dinner at the Hearthstone Grill, next Friday at 7 p.m. All good. Underneath it, the little, seen by everyone notification. No replies. No corrections. Just seen. I'd sent follow-ups. Just confirming the private room booking for Dad's party at Hearthstone next Friday. Reminder. Dad's big dinner this Friday. Paid the deposit today. 14 messages in total over the preceding weeks, all from me about this specific dinner. Planning, confirming, reminding. Not a single one of them had acknowledged those specific date confirmations directly. Not one of them had bothered to correct my understanding of the date. Then, scrolling further, my blood ran cold. There, nestled amongst unrelated chatter, was a message from Chloe, sent about 10 days ago. Ugh. Can we please do Dad's B-Day thing on Thursday instead of Friday? My friend is having a huge Glam Life collab party on Friday night and I absolutely cannot miss it. And right below it, Mom's swift reply. Of course, my Chloe sweetie. We'll make it Thursday then. Whatever works best for you. A separate thread, one I clearly wasn't meant to scrutinize. They knew. They all knew the date had been changed. And they had all shown up, celebrated, and feasted. Just without me. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it stole my breath. My hands were shaking violently now. Not from the evening chill, not even just from simple rage. It was something deeper, something worse. It was the kind of bone-deep tremor that comes from the devastating realization that you've been silently screaming for understanding, for basic consideration, inside your own head for years, and not a single one of them ever truly listened, or cared enough to listen, because they simply didn't have to. I could picture it all so clearly. Chloe, probably laughing with her mouth full of the cake the hostess mentioned, not a care in the world. Mom, fussing happily over the place cards she'd brought, ensuring everything was just so for everyone else. Dad, undoubtedly raising a glass, perhaps giving a toast I would never hear, to a celebration I was meant to fund but not attend. And in that moment, a terrible, liberating truth crystallized in my mind. I was never really invited to be part of their inner circle. Not truly. I was included when I was useful, when my resources or my willingness to organize things served their purpose. I was tolerated when I was paying the bills or solving their problems. But I was never, ever truly wanted for just being me, Olivia. That stark truth settled heavily in my chest, a leaden weight. But strangely, it didn't crush me the way I thought such a realization might. Instead, it steadied me. The raw pain began to coalesce into a cold, hard resolve. For so many years, I desperately told myself that being needed by them was enough. That it was a form of love, a substitute for genuine affection. I'd convinced myself that love could sound like a constant stream of requests of, Olivia, can you just? That family connection could look like a series of implicit invoices, financial and emotional, disguised as care and belonging. But standing on that dark street, the truth was undeniable. Love isn't measured by how much someone expects from you or how much they can extract. It's measured by whether they show up for you, especially when there's absolutely nothing for them to take, nothing for them to gain. And in all my life, not one member of my immediate family had ever truly, selflessly shown up just for me. I don't know how long I sat there in my car, engulfed by the darkness and my own turbulent thoughts. An hour, maybe more. The world outside faded away. Somewhere in that profound stillness, something inside me finally, irrevocably cracked. It wasn't a loud, dramatic snap, not like a bone breaking cleanly. It was quieter, more insidious, like an old, stressed seam slowly tearing open. Soft at first, then gradually widening, irreversible. The initial storm of tears had passed. I didn't cry anymore. I didn't feel the urge to call anyone to vent or seek comfort. I certainly didn't scream into the indifferent night like some overwrought heroine in a movie. Instead, a chillingly calm focus settled over me. I drove home to my small apartment, the decision made. Once inside, I didn't bother turning on the TV or making tea. I went straight to my desk, opened my laptop, and began the grim task of excavating years of financial records. I pulled up old online bank statements, scrolled through saved screenshots of FamConnect messages from Chloe detailing her various needs, and my subsequent transfers. I found the digital receipt for the $800 deposit to the Hearthstone Grill. I even opened my specialized budgeting software, BudgetWise, a tool I used for my Pixelcraft Studio's freelance income and expenses. With a new, grim determination, I created a new category: family financial support. Line by line, I started entering every loan, every gift that was more of an obligation, every bailed-out bill I could recall and find a record for. Chloe's moving expenses, the non-refundable portion of that disastrous study abroad attempt, the countless small loans that were never repaid. The contribution for mom and dad's roof. The numbers climbed steadily, horrifyingly. The total, displayed in stark black digits on the screen, was far, far more than I had ever allowed myself to consciously acknowledge. It was a staggering sum, representing years of my hard work, my sacrifices, my naivete. I stared at that figure until it felt like it was burning itself onto the back of my retinas. My gaze drifted to the wall above my monitor, where a collection of vintage-style movie posters I had designed for fun were tacked up. One, a film noir homage, featured a striking, resilient-looking heroine, her eyes full of fierce determination. I caught my own reflection in the darkened screen of the laptop, tired, pale, but with a new, unfamiliar hardness in my eyes that mirrored the woman in the poster. A cold smile touched my lips. Tomorrow, or perhaps the day after, whenever I was ready, they would all learn exactly what it feels like when the person they've consistently ignored, taken for granted, and exploited finally stops playing her assigned, silent, accommodating part in their self-serving drama. And I knew with absolute, unshakable certainty precisely where and with whom I would start. The days of Olivia Hayes, the family doormat, were officially over. It took me a couple of days to meticulously organize my evidence and mentally prepare. Then, on Sunday afternoon, I sent a carefully worded message to the family group on FamConnect. It was polite, almost formal, and deliberately devoid of my usual accommodating tone. I need to speak with all of you together regarding some important matters about our future interactions. Please be available at Mom and Dad's house on Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. A stark contrast to my usual. Would it be okay if? Or, I was hoping we could. No one asked what important matters I was referring to. No one questioned the slightly demanding tone. Of course, they didn't. They never asked anything much when it came to me, unless it was a prelude to asking for something. Their silence in the chat was just another layer of confirmation. On Tuesday, at precisely 6:58 p.m., I pulled my car into Mom and Dad's driveway. The familiar yellow glow of the porch light was on, casting long shadows across the lawn. Through the living room window, I could see their silhouettes moving about, a pantomime of oblivious domesticity. Chloe was, predictably, sprawled on the sofa, her face illuminated by the blue light of her phone. Dad was already settled into his worn recliner, likely with the TV remote in hand. Mom was bustling around, fluffing throw pillows on the couch as if they were expecting actual company, not just their elder daughter who they'd recently stabbed in the back. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands were steady on the strap of my shoulder bag, which contained my damning folder. I took a deep breath and walked up the steps. When I stepped inside, the forced chatter ceased. They all looked up, their expressions ranging from mild curiosity to Chloe's bored indifference. No one said sorry for the Hearthstone grill debacle. No one even had the decency to look remotely guilty or uncomfortable. It was Mom who broke the silence, her voice a little too bright, a little too forced. "Olivia, honey, you're here. We weren't quite sure if you were still upset about, you know, the other night." Her eyes darted nervously towards Dad, then Chloe. I didn't respond to her question about whether I was still upset. The monumental audacity of it almost made me laugh. Instead, I walked calmly to the center of the room, my gaze sweeping over each of them. I sat down on the edge of the armchair opposite the sofa and placed a thick, meticulously organized folder on the coffee table with a soft thud. Chloe finally looked up from her phone, her brow furrowed in mild irritation at the interruption. "Ooh, what's that, Olivia?" she asked, her tone laced with a faint, condescending amusement. "Homework from Pixelcraft Studios." I met her gaze, my own expression unreadable. "Actually, Chloe," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion, "it's a bill." I opened the folder and retrieved the top sheet, placing it squarely in the middle of the table. More precisely, it's a statement of account for the Hearthstone Grill. It details the $800 deposit I paid for Dad's birthday dinner, plus the $200 cancellation fee the restaurant would have charged had I been informed and able to cancel in time. A grand total of $1,000. I paused, letting my words sink in. Consider this my final present to the family. Or perhaps, more accurately, think of it as a settlement statement for services rendered and expenses incurred on your behalf. I looked directly at Dad. "The dinner you all enjoyed so much, the one I paid for but wasn't invited to." Dad, who had been observing with a frown, let out a snort of derision. He leaned forward in his recliner, his face reddening slightly. "Now, you listen here, Olivia," he began, his voice rumbling. "You can't be serious, you're joking, right?" "I am perfectly serious, Dad," I replied, my voice unwavering. "I am not joking in the slightest." Mom's overly bright smile faltered, tightening at the corners. A flicker of something annoyance, panic, crossed her face. "Olivia, honey," she said, her voice losing some of its forced cheerfulness. Are you actually trying to make us pay you back for Dad's birthday dinner?" The sheer incredulity in her tone was almost insulting. "No, Mom," I said, leaning forward just a fraction, my eyes locking with hers. "I'm not making you do anything. I'm presenting you with a bill for an event I funded under false pretenses, and I'm giving you the option to settle it, because I want to make one thing crystal clear from this precise moment forward. Anything and everything you want or expect from me will come with a formal, itemized invoice." The air in the room crackled with sudden tension. Even Chloe, for once, had put her phone down, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and dawning indignation. The room was utterly still for a long moment. The only sound was the quiet hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. As I said, even Chloe had actually lowered her phone, her mouth slightly agape. Dad's face, which had been slowly turning a deeper shade of red, now looked thunderous. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low and dangerous. Now you listen to me, Olivia. You need to drop this disrespectful attitude right now. We are your family. A humorless laugh escaped my lips. Are we, Dad? Are we really? I leaned back slightly, my gaze sweeping over each of them again. Is that what family does? The same family that deliberately and intentionally excluded me from a significant family celebration, a celebration, I might add, that I had already put a non-refundable deposit on? My voice rose slightly, edged with the years of suppressed pain. The same family that has systematically drained me, both financially and emotionally, for as long as I can remember? Chloe, ever predictable, rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, please, Olivia, she scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. Get over yourself. No one made you pay for anything, ever. If you chose to throw your money around, that's totally on you. And that her callous, utterly shameless dismissal was when it happened. That slow, tearing seam inside me didn't just widen. It snapped. Not a gradual crack this time, but a sudden, clean, irrevocable break. I stood up slowly, deliberately. The room suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. Fine, Chloe, I said, my voice dangerously calm, a stark contrast to the inferno raging inside me. You're absolutely right. No one technically made me do anything. So, let's talk about all the things that no one made me do, shall we? I reached into the folder on the coffee table and pulled out a neatly printed document, several pages long. It was the itemized list I had painstakingly compiled using BudgetWise, each line detailing a date, a recipient, a purpose, and an amount. I held it up. This, I announced, is a summary of financial favors I've extended over the years. My eyes found Chloe's. No one made me pay the full moving expenses for your trendy downtown apartment, Chloe. No one made me cover the non-refundable fees for that life-changing European study trip you abandoned at the last minute because the vibe wasn't right for your precious glam life content. No one made me pay for countless emergency vet bills for Bailey that strangely coincided with new purchases or nights out you flaunted online. My gaze shifted to Mom, whose face had gone pale. And no one made me contribute a substantial sum to the new roof on this house, Mom, even though I no longer live here. Simply because Dad felt I grew up here too. I looked at Dad, his face now a mask of disbelief and fury. And no one made me repeatedly top up your spending money for your golf trips, Dad, after you'd complained about Miller and Sons Hardware's stingy pension. No one made me discreetly pay your overdue property taxes that one year, Mom, when you were worried about a lien on the house. Or quietly cover the cost of groceries week after week when you claimed your knee hurt too much to go to the store, only for me to see you out shopping with Chloe the next day. You watch your tone, Olivia. Dad finally growled, his voice hardening into a dangerous rasp. He started to push himself up from his recliner. Oh, Dad, please, I said, a bitter smile playing on my lips. Don't strain yourself. I'm really just getting started. I laid the entire folder, now open, flat on the coffee table, revealing its contents. Printed bank statements with highlighted transactions. Screenshots of past FamConnect messages begging for money, copies of email transfers, even printouts from BudgetWise. All of it. A meticulous, undeniable record of their years of entitlement. What in God's name is all this now? Dad snapped. His eyes narrowed with suspicion and anger. This, Dad, I said, my voice steady and clear, is documentation. Every transaction, every loan, every gift, every dollar that has flowed from my bank account to yours or to Chloe's over the past 10 years. I paused for effect, then dropped the next bombshell. And speaking of unauthorized transactions, I continued, my gaze fixing squarely on Chloe, whose face had suddenly become very still, her earlier bravado vanishing. I recently discovered something quite interesting. I reached into the folder again and pulled out a few more printed sheets. It seems my old ArtPad Pro tablet, the professional grade one I lent you, Chloe, because you said you might need it for your creative glam life projects, has gone missing from my apartment. Imagine my surprise when I received a transaction completion email from Reselit, that online marketplace for used electronics. Chloe's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Apparently, I went on, my ArtPad Pro was sold last month for $300. The email, funnily enough, was in my inbox. It seems you forgot to delete it after you guessed my password and accessed my account to facilitate the sale and cover your tracks. I then held up a color printout of one of Chloe's recent Glam Life posts. It featured her posing coquettishly with a brand new, very expensive-looking designer handbag. And look at this, Chloe, your latest Glam Life triumph. That new handbag must have cost a pretty penny. What's that in the background, just behind you, peeking out from under your bed? Could it be the original box for my ArtPad Pro? I let the implications hang in the air. The funds from Reselit, by the way, were deposited into an account I didn't recognize. I wonder whose it could be. You sold my property, Chloe, without my knowledge or permission, and you kept the money. I believe the correct term for that is theft. So that $300, that's also being added to your little settlement statement. Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no sound emerged. Her face was a mask of shocked disbelief. Chloe, however, shot to her feet, her carefully constructed Glam Life composure finally cracking. Her face was flushed, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and something that looked suspiciously like panic. "Are you seriously doing all of this?" she shrieked, her voice rising. "Over a stupid old tablet I was probably going to return anyway." "No, Chloe," I said, my voice remaining dangerously calm, cutting through her hysteria. "I'm not doing this over a tablet. I'm doing this because for the first time in my adult life, I finally can. Because I finally see all of you for who you truly are and what you've done to me. And for the first time that evening, perhaps for the first time ever when I'd confronted them with an uncomfortable truth, no one had a clever retort. No one moved. No one spoke. The shock in the room was palpable. Chloe stood there, her arms now crossed tightly over her chest, her jaw clenched. Her usual smug, self-satisfied smirk had completely vanished, replaced by a look of strained anger and dawning, ugly realization. "I thought we were, done with all this drama." Chloe finally burst out, her voice a little too loud, a little too defensive. "It's not even that big of a deal. So I sold the tablet. You weren't even using it, Olivia. You always help out. You always have money from Pixelcraft. What's the big deal if I borrowed it and then recycled it?" There it was. Not quite a confession to theft, but a blatant admission of entitlement, a shameless justification of her actions. The casual assumption that my property was hers to dispose of as she pleased. Mom, seeing Chloe start to unravel, immediately jumped to her defense, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and maternal protectiveness. "Olivia, please, my Chloe didn't mean any harm. I'm sure of it. She probably just. She panicked when she needed money for that bag. It was just one little mistake. You know how much pressure she's under, trying to make it as an influencer on Glam Life. It's a very demanding world." Her eyes pleaded with me. "She was going to tell you. She was going to pay you back, weren't you, my little sweetie?" Chloe mumbled something incoherent, avoiding my gaze. "Stop, Mom," I said, my voice firm, cutting through her desperate excuses. "Just stop. Stop making excuses for her. Stop enabling her. She is a grown woman, not a child." Dad, who had been silent during Mom's outburst, finally pushed himself fully out of his recliner. He stood to his full height, trying to loom over me, his face a dark mask of fury. "Are you really going to do this, Olivia?" he demanded, his voice low and threatening. "Are you seriously prepared to call the police on your own sister? Potentially send Chloe to jail over a stupid second-hand tablet?" I met his glare without flinching. "No, Dad," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "I don't want to send Chloe to jail. But I absolutely want her to understand, and for all of you to understand, that she doesn't get to hide behind the word family as an excuse for theft or any other unacceptable behavior anymore. The free ride is over. I paused, then delivered the calculated blow. I haven't gone to the Oak Haven Police Department yet, but I want you all to know that I am seriously considering it. I've already looked into the process for filing a report for theft of property and unauthorized access to my online accounts. And if this bill, I gestured to the papers on the table, including the full replacement value of my ArtPad Pro, isn't settled promptly, I will be left with no other option than to pursue official channels. Chloe's face, which had regained a little of its defiant color, went deathly pale. Her eyes, wide with dawning horror, darted from me to Mom, then to Dad. You wouldn't, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. You're not serious, Olivia. Oh, I am completely serious, Chloe, I assured her, my gaze unwavering. Try me. Mom looked as though I had physically slapped her. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with anguish. Olivia, how could you even think such a thing? She cried, her voice cracking. You're destroying this family, tearing us apart. No, Mom, I said, my voice surprisingly gentle but firm. I'm not destroying this family. Chloe's actions and your collective enabling of them for years have done that. I am simply refusing to allow this family, as it currently operates, to continue destroying me. There was no yelling from my end, no dramatic accusations, no slamming of doors. Just the quiet, methodical, and unstoppable unraveling of a narrative they had controlled for my entire life. And for the very first time, looking at their stunned, fearful faces, I could see it clearly, the genuine fear flickering behind their eyes. Perhaps not an immediate terror of Chloe actually going to prison. They probably still believed they could manipulate their way out of that. But a deeper fear. The fear of exposure. The fear of consequences. The fear of losing their hold over me. They knew, I could see it in the sudden shift in their demeanors, that I meant every single word I said this time. And more importantly, they knew, with a dawning and unwelcome certainty, that I finally could and would follow through. The power dynamic in the room had just tilted, irrevocably. Chloe suddenly let out a laugh, a brittle, sharp sound that held no humor, only a desperate, misplaced bravado. So, what is it you want then, Olivia? She sneered, though her eyes still held that flicker of fear. Is it just about the money? You want a check? Is that it? She fumbled for her purse, her movements jerky. Fine. I'll write you a check for your stupid tablet. Happy now? No, Chloe, you won't just write me a check and make this all go away, I said quietly, my voice cutting through her bluster. Because this was never just about the money, though God knows you've taken enough of that. My gaze swept over all of them, one by one. This is about all the years you've used me, exploited my good nature, and had the audacity to call it family love. This is about all the times you collectively drained me dry, emotionally and financially, and then tried to convince me I was somehow lucky to be so needed by all of you. This is about respect, Chloe. Something you've never shown me. A heavy, suffocating silence descended upon the room once more. Chloe stared at me, her mouth agape, speechless for once. Mom was openly weeping now, soft, hiccuping sobs into a tissue she'd retrieved from her pocket. Dad, his face grim and stony, finally stepped forward, his fists clenched at his sides. His voice was low, heavy with anger, and perhaps a dawning sense of defeat. And you think this whole charade makes you some kind of hero, Olivia? He demanded. I was already standing, my folder clutched in my hand like a shield. I met his furious gaze without wavering. No, Dad, I said, my voice clear and strong. It doesn't make me a hero. It makes me free. I'll give you all 1 week, I stated, my tone final. 1 week from today to deposit the full amount, the $1,000 for the Hearthstone grill. and the $300 for my ArtPad Pro into my bank account. If the full $1,300 isn't there by next Tuesday at 5 p.m., I will walk into the Oak Haven Police Department first thing Wednesday morning and file that theft report against Chloe, and I will pursue it to the fullest extent of the law. The choice, I added, looking pointedly at Chloe, then at Mom and Dad, is entirely yours. With that, I turned and walked towards the front door, the folder still clutched tightly in my hand. Behind me, I heard Chloe mutter a venomous "you bitch," just loud enough for me to catch. Mom's quiet crying intensified. Dad didn't move, didn't say another word, just stood there like a statue carved from fury. I didn't look back. I reached the front door, my hand on the cool metal of the doorknob. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched my lips. It wasn't a happy smile, but it was a smile of grim satisfaction. Then I opened the door and stepped out into the cool night air, pulling it closed firmly behind me. It wasn't a slam, just a definite, final click. Not because I'd won some petty family squabble. There was nothing to win in this wretched situation. But because I had finally, unequivocally, stopped playing a rigged game I had never consciously agreed to participate in. The weight that lifted from my shoulders as I walked to my car was immense. The week that followed my ultimatum was filled with a strange, nerve-wracking silence from my family. I don't know if they scrambled to find the $1,300 or if they called my bluff. Frankly, by the end of that week, a part of me almost didn't care about the money itself anymore. The act of standing up to them, of drawing that final, uncrossable line, had been liberating in itself. A few days after the deadline I'd set had passed, a notification popped up on my social media. It was a direct message from my cousin, Ethan, the quiet, thoughtful librarian from Oak Haven Library. He'd always been a peripheral figure at family gatherings, usually with his nose in a book, never taking sides. Olivia, his message began, simple and direct. I heard things got pretty intense the other night. I don't know all the details, but I've seen how things have been for you for a long time. My breath hitched. I just wanted to say, I think you did what you had to do, and I don't think you're wrong for it. This isn't much, but please accept it as a small token of support from me. Attached to the message was a digital gift card for a popular online retailer, the amount coincidentally matching the $800 deposit for the Hearthstone grill. Tears welled in my eyes as I read his words. Tears of a different kind this time. Tears of gratitude, of being seen, however briefly, by someone within that tangled family web. Thank you, Ethan, I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. This means more than you know. I didn't use the gift card. Instead, I printed out a copy of it and tucked it into my journal, a precious reminder that not everyone was blind, that a quiet act of kindness could feel like a lifeline. Life moved on. As the weeks turned into months, a new sense of peace settled over me. The constant knot of anxiety in my stomach slowly began to unwind. My work with Pixelcraft Studios flourished. I poured all my energy and creativity into my web design projects, and it paid off. I landed a significant contract with a major new client, Innovate Solutions, to redesign their entire corporate website, a challenging and prestigious project. The lead designer at Pixelcraft Studios called me personally. Olivia, your pitch for the Innovate Solutions project was outstanding, he'd said. Your designs are fresh, intuitive, and you've perfectly captured the client's vision. They're thrilled. His praise was a balm to old wounds I hadn't realized were still so tender. I moved into a new apartment, a bright, airy space with large windows overlooking a quiet, tree-lined street in a different part of Oak Haven. It was all mine, paid for by my own hard work, filled with my own things, including the collection of vintage movie posters I loved so much. Each morning, I'd make a fresh pot of coffee, my preferred drink, and sit by the window, watching the sunrise paint the sky, planning my day, feeling a sense of calm and purpose I hadn't felt in years. There was no contact from Mom, Dad, or Chloe. Their silence, which once would have felt like a punishment, a confirmation of my unworthiness, now felt like clean, fresh air. It was the sound of freedom, the quiet hum of my own life, finally lived on my own terms. Then, one afternoon, an unexpected email landed in my inbox. It was from the director of a small, independent film I had passionately reviewed on my personal movie blog a few months earlier, one of the few hobbies I'd maintained just for myself. Dear Olivia Hayes, it read, I came across your insightful review of my film, The Last Silhouette, and was deeply impressed by your understanding of its themes and visual language. Your passion for cinema shines through. My heart began to beat faster. We are organizing a small, independent film festival here in Oak Haven next spring, and we are looking for discerning new voices to join our judging panel. Would you, by any chance, be interested in considering such a role? I stared at the email, a wide, incredulous smile spreading across my face. Me? A film festival judge? It felt like a dream. I eagerly accepted the invitation to be a film festival judge. The months leading up to it were a whirlwind of watching incredible independent films and engaging in thoughtful discussions with fellow cinephiles. On the opening night of the Oak Haven Indie Film Festival, I stood in the brightly lit lobby, a small official-looking festival brochure in my hand. There, under the list of guest jurors, was my name printed in neat, clear type. Olivia Hayes, freelance web designer, Pixelcraft Studios, affiliate/film, reviewer, The Celluloid Dreamer blog. A wave of quiet pride washed over me, warm and profound. It wasn't the validation I had once craved so desperately from my family. This was something different, something better. It was self-earned, a recognition of my own passions, my own voice. I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached my eyes. The silence from my family was still there, a vast, empty space where their demands and criticisms used to be. But it no longer defined me. I was Olivia Hayes, and I was finally, wonderfully, free to write my own story, one frame at a time.